My name is Cindy Carpentieri, and I am interviewing Sara Doude for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is March 2nd, 2019, and the interview is taking place at Georgia College in Milledgeville, Georgia. All right, let's get started. Sara, what year were you born in, and where were you born?
I was born in July of 1978 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
And can you describe your family's political leanings or political atmosphere?
Yes. My parents were very active in local and state politics. My dad was a state representative for 36 years, so it was all of my life. It was, I think, started in 74. For 2-year increments for 36 years, and he ran as like a blue dog Democrat, and now he's considered like really liberal in the state. But at the time anyway, we went to his retirement party, Frank Buck Day, and here's some of the stuff that they said about him. This was the kind of guy my dad was. Thank you for the new bridge so we can get to work faster. It wasn't anything like liberal, conservative. It was more to the point, thanks for the road. You know, so my parents were always had, and always about helping like the farmer guy who can't get TennCare, which is the state. So that was sort of social justice type stuff, but they never said it out loud. I never knew I was liberal until, I didn't realize it till college.
Really?
Yeah.
So even growing up because your dad would have had to run for re-election.
As a Democrat, I just sort of thought that was normal.
Yeah.
But my family came from farmers and were like New Deal Democrats, real poor. And work hard, you'll put yourself through college. But so both of my parents put themselves through college when they got married, but they wanted their girls to not have to pay for college. So by the time I was there, I got that actually.
Oh, nice.
So that was sort of my parents' political leanings, and I knew more about the stuff my dad advocated for in the legislature than they ever like talked to me about abortion or the like mainstay conservative liberal issues.
Okay, so was politics kind of part of dinner table conversation?
Politics all the time. Like we give 2 years ago at Christmas, it was all Barack Obama and how wonderful he was. But then we talked about his flaws also. And that like dirty Santa, we give each other Trump gifts and you know, and, like pictures with famous Republicans, like his grandchildren. Like he's a trickster with Republicans. He makes fun of them for how tight they are on money. And he's got some like really good Republican friends, and they just constant back and forth about, it's more like a game, and as a man he can afford that.
So kind of good-natured teasing about that.
So that's what I mean by like, I really didn't know that was different.
Well, yeah, because Murfreesboro is pretty conservative area, right?
Yeah, I grew up about 45 miles from Murfreesboro in a really little town, like 300 people in a small county. And so I mean, like I grew up with, you know, the mayor's daughter. Like, but I went to public high school and stuff. There was no like other option, and also that was snooty. And, like we were considered rich, but we're totally middle class, like by other people. You know, like when you leave that county.
So what the other kids like that you went to school with or families in your community, were they also pretty Democratic, or is it more
I found out later, like they just voted for my dad because they loved my dad. It wasn't, or he would do stuff to help them, you know. It wasn't Republican, Democrat. My dad does say it's really different now. Really different.
And
because he would be the 90s. Well, he would be 70s through like 2000-ish. So he saw that change in Tennessee legislature. So it was very different. I got more stuff like your dad represented my stepdad in the divorce. Or,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in third. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even understand what I mean. Did you guys talk about that change as it was happening, or has it only been since then, recently, that you've been talking to your dad about politics and talked about how different it was back then versus now?
He's talked about it. Both of them have talked about it as it's going on. My mom was a really good political wife. We hosted, I know how to set a table and how to hostess a party. But also, I mean, she, to some extent, guided some of his politics, especially women's issues. And he says stuff just to rib her and us. He's like sort of a shitster.
Yeah.
But I didn't know really I was liberal until college.
Yeah, how did you find that out?
When I would be talking to like some of my friends from home who I really respected and stuff. One of my friends I grew up with the same people, like birth through 18, and some of us still keep up with each other. But the Obama election really brought it out with one of my friends, and I was just like, I thought everybody, because y'all voted for him.
Yeah.
And stuff.
And she said, so people from home were like, yeah, who's this guy? We're really unhappy.
And it was all. No, my dad decided to retire, and the person who came in, is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
No, when you realized you were liberal and at the Obama election, when you were talking to your friend from home who was like, this is terrible.
Well, it was more like we got into it. It was the first time he had ever voted Democrat. And so we got into that discussion, and he was like, yeah, everybody in our DeKalb counties, conservative. Sarah,
so he was saying we're the outsiders.
No. And I was just like, I just assumed, I don't. So that was part of the change for me too, is realizing, well, like, I guess getting actual stuff done for your real life, like getting insurance or a road to get to work quicker wasn't as important as, and I noticed that change. But also, you gotta remember I was going through high school and college at all these periods of time, and I didn't pay attention as much as I probably should, but I paid more attention than a lot of college students.
Oh yeah, because you grew up in a political family, but it's interesting that was just part of your life and you didn't see it as Democrat, Republican, you just saw it as you just get stuff done if you're elected to office. It sounds like that's what your dad focused on, was taking care of people. All right, so once you got to college and you realized this, did that change anything about your active, like were you an activist in college?
This is a big sticking point for me. I've knocked on doors and met people I was too shy to meet since I was very small. I will not go door to door for anybody. And I did for Stacey Abrams. That was the first time ever. I did for Obama. But I was never really involved in like Young Democrats or anything. I was sort of tired of it. I got a lot of crap for stuff my dad did and said. And he would say some off-color stuff, like totally minor compared to now. But like my college friends would be like, "Did you see your dad?" You know, like making fun of. So when I was 18, I said I'm moving 300 miles away from that last name, and I did.
So where did you go to school?
I went to MTSU in Murfreesboro, and that was as far as my mom would let me go. I've been type 1 diabetic since I was 11, and she was like, "You pass out, I won't be there," like within 30 minutes. But I got into UT Knoxville, which would be like 4 hours, but that was not, no.
Yeah.
So then after she figured out I could take care of myself for the most part, and I found me a good man.
Yeah.
I'm saying that jokingly.
I don't.
There's a lot of stuff I say jokingly. People don't know a joke, so let me clarify. And once she figured that out, like, it was fine. I went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I found out I was pretty liberal there. And I found out through my husband I was pretty liberal. He grew up in like middle Mississippi around Starkville. And so I was promised myself I would never have to be political unless I really had a desire. And I mean, I'm more about it now. Through college, I was sexually assaulted at 18? Yeah, my freshman year. And my mom, the student judicial board was the way we went. And that's how I got my dissertation and all that stuff. Yeah. And having a mother and a father in politics, a father who, yeah, and knowing that my father was on one of the higher ed committees. So the president of MTSU knew. It was a whole thing, more of a thing than some people have. So my mom's coming in there wanting a court reporter, all this stuff. And so anyway, I got more political after that because I got into women's studies because I asked myself, like, why? Yeah. And it was more important to me to look into the legal reasons as to how this came about, why I was asked certain questions. Yeah. And then I got really involved in women's issues once I got to Hattiesburg, and there was a lot of stuff in Mississippi at the time about closing Planned Parenthood and some other stuff. And I was a little bit involved in that stuff, so that would be early 2000s. But never been. When I came to Georgia College around 2006, the Young Democrats needed an advisor. But I was never in it in college. Yeah. And so I was their advisor, but I was like, you do it. Yeah. It's not my thing. Yeah. So I was like, hands off. Like, if you really want this, here. Yeah. It's a very conservative campus. There were only like 50 members in Young Democrats and like 600 in the Republican.
Well, you were basically, by being their advisor, you allowed that club to exist because it can't exist without an advisor.
Right, it can't. And now I passed it on to somebody, a new professor who's political science, who's active and wants to do it more. Because I feel like now there's more of a political atmosphere that's more open to it. I think Democrats sort of got lackadaisical around after Obama won, it felt like, to me, just like, we're in it. Yeah. I do feel like that, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. So what do you do? What's your profession?
I'm a college professor. I am associate professor of criminal justice and criminology.
And you said you kind of specialize, you were talking about your dissertation?
My dissertation was on acquaintance rape and perceptions of acquaintance rape. It was published in 2008. I never divided it up and put it into regular articles, but now that I look back at it, it was kind of progressive. I did like the whole autonomy, women's search for autonomy, because that's what I felt like that had been taken away from me, is my right to my own body. That's what I boiled it down to as the main thing. And my dissertation covered male-on-male rape, so college students' perceptions of if this scenario was rape, and female-on-female, male-on-female, female-male. Oh, wow. And now I'm like, I need to replicate that, because it's totally different now, right? And I teach some about me too. Yeah. So I've got like new ideas of brewing.
Yeah, but it shows that even back then you were already starting to think about some of these issues.
I didn't think it was really that, like...
Yeah. Well, but I mean, if like clearly that's what was going on in your mind in your personal life, even if like did that translate to any political activities back in college? I mean, you said some like closing Planned Parenthood and things like that. Were you active then, or
no? Really? I just held back channels as far as, well, here's some of the lobbyists, as I understand some of the lobbyist system on accident. A lot of the stuff I know is by accident and the real deal.
Yeah.
Not like, here's who talks to who and who goes to golfing together. Like,
Yeah.
that's where real decisions and
Uh-huh.
negotiations get made. And a lot of people don't think that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, lobbyists were in my life and I didn't know it.
Yeah, usually that's who Dad golfed with or whatever. Yeah, so.
Well, my dad didn't golf. That was who he talked farm with.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
My dad was different. He'd go to court with cow shit on his old country lawyer.
You know what? That's probably why people liked him, and that he was
Seriously,
one of them. Yeah.
and I think for the most part, people like me, because of some of that stuff, like, he'd tell you the truth, even if it hurt, you know?
Yeah, there's an authenticity that people recognize that are like, okay, I don't have to guess what that person is saying. They're not trying to win me over. They're just saying what they think. So, tell me about how you how you got involved with the stuff leading up to the march. Well, actually, so Stephanie, when I talked to her this morning, she mentioned that you guys have been friends for a while, and you decided to start a Middle Georgia Progressive Women's Group. Tell me about how that started, because she didn't really talk about that.
Okay. This is somebody who talked to Stephanie. It's this politician around here, Floyd Griffin. He was mayor of Milledgeville for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's more like my dad's age, so 60s, 70s, so he will be born in 40s. So he has, it's the different sort of ideas about stuff, because it's pre-baby boomer.
Right.
And he's a black man, and he was like, well, where are all the white women? Like, why aren't they active?
Yeah.
Like the liberal white women. And that's how that group got started. Apparently he said that to Stephanie, and Stephanie was like, good point, where are we?
And she'd come to you and say, hey, you're one, help me find
Right,
another.
help me. And I've always, like I said, I've been up front. Like, I help background stuff. I'll look up laws for you. And here's how you get the file in against, the Baldwin County Courthouse having their voter registration office closed at noon. Here's where you need to go look, But I promised I wouldn't be. I'm not the front face. And so Aaron Weston's another person on campus who sort of took it over and planned meetups and stuff like that. There's been conversation of if we should let men in. It's basically a Facebook group, and they meet up and they go to Stacey Abrams stuff, They're more active trying to get more active in local politics. The Milledgeville pool got cemented in a couple of years ago, and that was one thing they took on, is trying to get a public pool back. And so they've gotten the signatures, and now it's just a matter of fighting the county commissioners. And that's where that is, and they've been doing that like 2 years,
Yeah, but you guys actually started this even before Trump was elected, right?
Right, yeah.
So, okay, so you guys, was it just kind of
I think it was more the summer before, so it would be like 2016.
Okay.
It would be earlier 2016.
Yeah.
And so the pool thing was the first thing they took on, and had research on it, how it keeps kids out of trouble, and I can attest to that. I went to a public pool myself. And Stephanie provided the history of closing public pools as related to race, and but people don't like that kind of thing.
Well, when you get a group of
But you
people
make
together,
the argument to support the money part of it.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay.
That's just one issue they focus on. And some of the county commissioners around here are like, well, you can go to the country club. Oh, that's part of the like just the insensitivity of not knowing.
Yeah.
And I felt like that group, part of the point was to get to know some of the more local women or the people that lived in Milledgeville longer than these college professors,
Yeah,
right? Because it can't be all run by college professors. You have to have some buy-in from other groups. And
Yeah.
part of that group was that too.
yeah, okay.
So,
So was
that's-
that surprising to find out how many progressive women were around?
yeah,
here?
and I
Like,
think a lot of it is still like, whoa. You know?
Where have you been?
Right, because I think a lot of us knew each other existed, but we didn't know where we could find each other.
Yeah,
And that's how that started, to be honest, and it's really done a good job. They're doing a forum or something on intro to local politics with somebody else we work with,
Uh-huh.
you know, doing like a workshop on how you start this. Because a lot of people don't know how to run for election,
Uh-huh.
you know, and those are the sort of things like I can help with.
yeah.
The back burner type stuff,
Uh-huh.
the logistics of it.
Oh, cool, okay. Did you guys, in your group, you know, after Trump was elected, was there, like any do you remember any of the discussion after Trump was elected within that group about, you know, what to do now? Because that seemed to be the big question after the election.
Yeah, it was a period of mourning, of course, and anger. And it's okay for white women to get mad. Joke again, people think we shouldn't. It was more like, well, we gotta run for office. It was all local stuff,
Uh-huh.
which I think is a really good place to start.
Yeah,
Because if you start seeing stuff change in your own community, it gives other people like, whoa,
yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
we can do something to make this place better.
yeah,
And then if you desire that, move up the
Yeah.
ladder.
yeah,
So it was more like, we have to get active in this.
uh-huh,
You can't sit passively and just let it go.
yeah,
We did do some stuff, like pantsuit day for Hillary Clinton. It was a group picture of all of us in our pantsuits, mainly college professors. But I'm not sure any of us really felt like, I was like, go Hillary, but I wasn't ever like, I'm gonna wear a button.
Yeah.
You know, I have buttons because I like to collect political memorabilia, especially if it's like something I love, you know.
yeah,
But I wasn't ever like out campaigning for Hillary. And in this other recovery group that has variety of political opinions, and we are not supposed to talk about that in our meetings, but we go out to eat a lot. And I had already had some spar back and forth about some of these things, like grab them by the pussy and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm well adept in defending stuff, but I wasn't ever like really aggressive about her. I would say I was more aggressive about Obama,
uh-huh,
and John Kerry even, than Hillary, and I'm not real sure why.
yeah,
Now that I look back on it, I'm not real sure why. She did remind me of my mom a lot, and I love my mom a lot. She is who I am,
yeah,
and growing into, actually.
Unfortunately.
And so I'm not real sure really why I never really felt real passion
yeah,
about Hillary. And some of it, I think, to me, was it felt uppity.
yeah,
And that stereotype of the uppity Democrat.
yeah,
And I grew up in something so different than that. So different.
yeah,
And so I think that was my turn off, not necessarily turn off, but the reason why I wasn't real eager.
yeah. Like you would support her, but not, like you said, not wear buttons, not go door to door like you have for Stacey Abrams. And okay, what about? Because what then made you want to go to the march in January? Do you remember how that sort of got started?
Yeah, to me, I remember talking to some of my friends in the recovery group, and my sponsor is politically conservative.
Uh-huh.
We know this about each other. We just don't really talk about it much. And if we do talk about it, she really, like, some of the stuff she says about human rights and stuff mainly fits more of the liberal perspective.
Okay.
It's financial stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's fiscal conservatism. But I remember telling her, like, why I wanted to do this. And it wasn't, like, out of bitterness for Trump. It was more like, well, I feel like our potential rights could be taken away.
Yeah.
And I'm marching for myself
Yeah.
and other people who are on the not right side of society for their rights to not be taken away.
Yeah.
And I think during that time was the Muslim ban on country, like it was right there in your face.
Yeah.
And I remember this older fella in my recovery group, the one that me and him would tangle sometimes, like 83 old, he was just like, well, what are you marching for? Or no, he said, what are you marching against? I was like, nothing, I'm marching for myself.
Yeah.
So I never felt like it was like anti-Trump.
Yeah.
It was more like, I don't like these things he's saying.
Yeah.
And the way the country has supported these things he's saying.
Yeah.
You can sit there and say, well, I might not say those things.
Yeah.
Well, the attitude exists, and the attitude informs social norms turn into law, and blah, blah, and
Yeah.
we got the Muslim ban, and that social norm of hating Muslims has been going on since 9/11, so, and now it's law. So that's sort of how I got into it. I never saw it as anti-Trump. It was more like this whole attitudes towards, like, Americans that weren't white and male.
So is that the thing that really sort of you were the most passionate about, is that he was saying white males only and
That's
screw
what it
everybody else?
felt like. And
Yeah.
cronyism.
Uh-huh.
Cronyism really bothers me.
Uh-huh.
And then also the idea, I've talked about this in my criminology class, and it almost makes me cry. The idea that people who are rich somehow have some better morality and know more, and the reason why they're rich is because they worked hard.
Uh-huh.
And I think some of that is from my own family background. I know about stripping tobacco,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know about hard work. That does not get you rich,
Yeah.
you know? And so a large part of it was, well, half of the nation said, hey, okay to this. And half of the nation said, no.
Yeah.
Well, so Stephanie, it was a Facebook post first, and Stephanie was like, we ought to decide. And I mean, it was in 10 minutes. I was like, all right, I'm going. I didn't even tell my husband or anything. And he's like, okay, can I go? You know, and I'm like, sure, but it's kind of our thing. My husband is a real Jim.
He's a what? Real trooper?
He's a real Jim. But anyway, so like we decided in like 10 minutes, and I never felt like Stephanie's attitude was anti-Trump either. I felt like we were marching for something,
Yeah.
not against something.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like that's like a real misconception of that march,
Yeah.
to the point where people said stuff.
Like what?
What are you marching against?
Yeah.
Well, here's how that started, was because me and Stephanie did a WMAZ newscast, a news piece,
Uh-huh.
and it got shown like the week before. And for the local news, it's making news. They call us, they call Georgia College for expertise on all kinds of stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, and so every now and then people walk up to me and be like, I saw you on the news, and I'm like, damn it, what was it for? You know?
Wait, yeah. Which time? Better than see on the news than like mugshot.
Right.
So was it you guys saying, yes, we're going to the march, here's why?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And it was just, here are signs. This is what our sign said it all. And so,
What did your sign say? Do you remember?
no,
Okay.
I have it in my office. We sent you a picture.
Yeah, it was like
It's a long
kindness.
slogan. It's a
kindness.
common when science is real,
Uh-huh.
knowledge should be valued, Black Lives Matter,
So all lives matter.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For Black Lives to Matter, all lives must matter.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Women are people, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of sentiment. It's so famous
crazy
I've
stuff,
seen now.
yeah.
Like the weird stuff you actually have to say out loud.
Yeah. It's sort of
Like you
taken for
thought was
granted.
assumed.
All right, so, had you ever participated in any march before that?
Take back the night,
Mm-hmm.
but it was only like when I was speaking and stuff.
Okay. And can you tell me, so you and Stephanie decided to go to the march. Tell me about kind of how you decided, because you ended up taking a bus up there, right? How'd you decide,
Yeah.
like, how to get up there, the logistics of all that?
I think the bus thing came up as far as it was already planned. Like, we had seen a report or something, like, all these women are getting buses, and we're like, me and Stephanie are like, we're gonna do it authentic, right? We think we're roughing it, you
Yeah.
know? We looked up, like, how long the Freedom Riders.
Yeah, exactly.
We got it easy, right? And we got a bathroom on our bus.
Yeah.
And so that's how we're like, it'll be an adventure, you know? And we felt very passionate, but we felt like this was something. And my mom told me I better go, and she regretted not going to some of the marches because she was pregnant. And so she said I would regret it if I didn't go. And half of my immediate family went.
Really?
But there's
Okay.
4 girls
Uh-huh.
and 3 nieces, another niece, so 5 people out of like 15.
So not
So
your
a
parents,
third.
but people in your generation or the generation
Yeah.
after? How interesting. Did you
Yeah.
guys, because you didn't go together, did you go together?
No, we
went from
did. They
Tennessee
left
and you-
from University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
Did you see them while you were up there?
No, we couldn't get it together on that one. But there were people from my hometown, a couple of people. They got featured in the local newspaper.
Uh-huh.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
All the women from DeKalb County that were at the march, and I was included too. I thought that was pretty nice of them.
Yeah.
Um,
You're still a daughter of DeKalb County.
but we decided that was the best way. We didn't want to drive; it would have been about hassle,
Yeah.
and the logistics of it all made more sense.
Yeah.
We didn't want to get a hotel room. My sister was having a hard time getting hotel rooms. Ended up staying with one of my cousins. You know, a bunch of like logistics to work out, and it seemed like our situation, as far as a bus and staying on it the whole time,
Yeah.
was much better. We could stay up all night.
Yeah. You didn't have to worry about driving or finding your way. You get on.
Right.
And it's funny that you mentioned the Freedom Riders, because that's, everybody going together. Was that a consideration at all? Like, oh, we're all in this together, like going with a group of people, or did that not really cross your mind?
It didn't really cross my mind, but later it did.
Uh-huh.
Because that bus ride back, I mean, we had known each other from Friday at 10 until
Yeah.
Sunday at
Uh-huh.
10 in close quarters.
Uh-huh.
And it did feel like something you did together, even though
Yeah.
you might not have seen those people ever.
Yeah.
But on the way back, we got to hear about everybody's experience.
Yeah.
And how it was different per group,
Oh yeah, that I definitely want to hear. Like when you come back, we're gonna get to that. So what was the atmosphere like on the bus going up there?
Super excited. I'm much more laid back. I had eaten a cookie. I was anxious.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like all chill.
A cookie. Fair enough.
I was all chill. They're talking about like some of those women in the back were like, well, if they set off a bomb, I'm like, oh no, what if I got myself into? We need to write our social security numbers and phone numbers on our arm in case our body parts are exploded. And I'm like, not doing that. I will just go out with less parts. I don't know, not doing that. And Stephanie was like, Sarah, I love you because you said, no, probably not gonna happen. If it does happen, it's just meant to be that way.
Yeah.
I'll be buried without an arm. I don't know, you know. But it got to some like paranoid stuff like that, and I tried. I mean, that's a real possibility. You saw stuff like that in like Charleston, you know. But at the same time, I was just sort of like not playing into that because I could get paranoid about everything.
Yeah.
And so, luckily, I'm chill enough. I was like, back up, y'all.
Yeah.
Back up. Because there were some real high-strung people that you could feel like they thought we were going to be hated and marched against and that whole deal. And I didn't feel that way. I felt more of we're going there for, like, this love for all the people. Like, but that's me being a dreamer.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know.
Did you see any opposition
I
marchers or
did.
anything?
No. The hardest part was trying to find a bathroom. I'm sure Stephanie told you that.
Yes, she did. She talked about the sign on the side of the highway that y'all were holding up for each other.
It was like a whole group of women.
Yeah, that is a logistical challenge. If you can't, if there's no bathroom, like that's another basic human need.
Also, the food. Since I'm diabetic, real particular about having enough food. And so I had filled up my bag with like all kinds of stuff. And Stephanie's husband was like, this isn't the Hunger Games. And then we got there and it was actually the Hunger Games.
Nobody expected 1 million people to be there and didn't plan for it. So.
Right, and then also people don't know that Washington D.C. just like shuts down the day after the inauguration.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let us use any of the bathrooms from the inauguration. There was a lot of stuff roped off. And me and Stephanie walked a long way and found this McDonald's at like 5 o'clock p.m. And we had eaten all the stuff, and I had like a big old thing of water. And so, that McDonald's was like what you see in the desert. What are those called?
Yeah, Mirage.
Yeah.
That's probably the best McDonald's you've ever had, right?
Ever had in
the
my
best
life.
bathroom you ever had.
But there was like no planning as far as like the march. I'm not sure if they knew like how many people would show up. Like, of course, I mean, there was a stage and stuff, and I'm not slamming it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure people thought, oh, we could use the Trump bathroom or the inauguration bathroom. It's like, why wouldn't you be able to, you know? And what do they have on the National Mall anyway? Where do you pee when it's not an inauguration?
Exactly.
And so there were a couple of food trucks, and it was actually the Hunger Games.
Yeah. Did you guys, when you got off the bus, how did you know where to go? Did you get to where you thought you were, like, what did you expect when you were heading up? Let's start with that. You're on the bus, or you're picturing before you went. What did you expect? And how did you?
We just followed a big mass of people, and then somehow we had gotten a former student's brother. He was cool. Well, he had made a friend at the front of the bus with an older lady who couldn't walk very well. So at some point, me and Stephanie were walking, and she like does aerobics and stuff. You know, just, you know. And so at some point, we were just following a mass of people, and at some point, we split off from those two, and we just followed the mass. I expected like more actual marching, but it was like a bunch of speakers and stuff, and then marching. And by the time it was to the marching part, we were tired and wanted something. But we did actually hop in the marches, and some of the best songs were like from little kids.
Yeah, like what? What were some of your favorite songs or chants?
There was an older lady who was like, I can't believe I'm doing this again. And then a little kid was like, you pissed off my grandma. That was so funny. So there were some really good ones. I like the intergenerational ones.
Yeah, that's really cool that people are,
like recognize this is, we're doing this again.
Yeah, did you see, because, there were a lot of different, people were marching for different reasons. Like, did you see that, and did you feel like a commonality with people, or did you feel like everybody was sort of doing their thing?
It felt like a commonality just because you were there. We saw some people like protesting the tampon tax. Thought that was fascinating. Never knew about the tax on tampons. This lady had a big old tampon on her head. She was all about it, And I appreciated that, so there's specific, like when we're walking around, people just chilling, protesting their thing. But just, it was all women's top issues and equality top issues. It wasn't just women, it felt like. Cause you would see Black Lives Matter signs and things like that. It felt integrated, sort of, LGBT rights. And so, I don't feel like it was ever like divided. It was like an overall march that had been labeled Women's March, but it also addressed little specific parts of women's lives that matter. Under the whole.
That's odd.
And I think our sign said that because it covered a lot of topics.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons to be out there that day. And your sign covered a lot of those. Let's see. So how did the march sort of meet your expectations of it? Like what you did versus what you thought you'd be doing there? I know you said you thought there'd be more marching.
It exceeded my expectations. Like sitting there listening to Rhea Burke. I think that's her name. I think she spoke. I know a couple of the black men who were murdered by police officers. Their moms were there. Listening to some of that stuff, did not expect the emotional feeling of that. And none of the celebrities really impressed me. But also it was hard to hear. So
I was gonna ask, where were you guys, and were there big speakers? How did you hear?
There were big speakers, and I have no clue. If I looked at the map, I don't know where we were.
Were you on the mall, or were you on a side street?
Me and Stephanie walked through the mall, but we were on some side street with the stage in the middle, and we met up with some of her friends. And talked to them, and we tried to listen, but there was, it exceeded my expectations. Like, it felt like walking around smiling at a sister, like we weren't like, I'm gonna stab you because you're a whatever, know. It didn't feel like angry. It felt really like, this is our call to do something.
Yeah, I agree. And so you felt like the overall feeling when you were walking around was positive, and people coming together for a common goal.
And the children and families out there warmed my heart. Like the dad I don't know why that does that. Well, it's because a lot of men see women's issues as not their issues, and it really bothers me. So when I see a dad out there with his little girl on him, on his shoulders, I'm like, there's a dad who gets it. But then I don't want to commend him either because, like, you should know that,
Yeah.
right? But that was, like, and then intergenerational, like the nana or the granny, and then the mom who's middle-aged, and then her daughter, and then their kid. I love that. And you could tell, like, you could tell this is a big deal to a lot of people when older women in wheelchairs and stuff get out and do stuff like that.
Yeah, because they need to use the bathroom all the time too.
Right?
Oh,
They're
right.
hungry.
Yeah.
But it seems like a lot more work. But also, like, for me, I tend to have to think about things like that because whenever I go somewhere, I have a whole bag of stuff with me
Yeah.
for my diabetes. So I don't go certain places because I have to have all this it's harder for me to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, you have to carry the stuff with you
No
to maintain
matter
your
what.
health. Yeah.
No matter what. And so I understand, like, wow, that's a big deal to get out in a wheelchair or whatever it is, if you have an oxygen tank or any of those things. So I saw it as more like, well, people are really, really dedicated to this. And this is a real feeling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were points where me and Stephanie cried, like, that it was intense.
Oh yeah, when you see the passion that's out there. I mean, yeah, what was it about that really, when you look at that, like, what are you seeing in that that's so powerful? Like, why is that powerful?
Well, I saw it more from my hometown and my own nieces. Like one of my friends, Amanda, from home. She's the only Democrat in her family, apparently. And how much she wrote and had passion about this election. And how when she went, she made sure her daughter went. She made sure both of them went.
Yeah.
And and I could feel it from my nieces too. Like, they're knitting their hats. I didn't do one of the hats, but they're like so excited. And my sister Melinda, their mom too, just like, we have to do this. It was more like, we have no other option, Sarah. And well, really, when I see young people, one of the reasons why I love college students is because they have passion.
Yeah.
And you just got to tap into it and find what that passion is and find in their people.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a big part of, once I found my people in college, I had a lot of passion for what I was doing, and that can change your life. For my nieces, you could tell there was passion in there, like, I have an obligation to my little sister and our children to do this.
Yeah.
Like, they were even looking forward to what their potential daughters could be going through. And I mean, they're in college.
Yeah.
I never.
They're having a different experience. It's how times change. But do you think this march maybe sort of showed some people their people? So once you find your people, you can sort of
Like,
express
there
your
are
passion.
other people out there. You are not crazy for thinking this.
Yeah.
My niece Emmeline, I feel like she was dating a guy. She's still dating. I feel like he sort of politically was just sort of like, I don't know this. Oh, I hope she doesn't hear this part. I'll stop.
What about then, I'll switch gears, the other people that you saw? So there were the marchers, people that were clearly there, but other people that you interacted with, maybe law enforcement or people on the metro or, shopkeepers, the people at McDonald's, did you get any sense from them about what they thought about the march, or were they respectful?
The cops, I remember distinctly, being really respectful. And some of the women cops, I talk to cops, I feel comfortable with cops because I teach criminal justice. And I know it's their job to to do both, like not let stuff get out of hand, you
Yeah.
know, and make sure that people aren't walking in the middle of the road when they aren't supposed to, you
Yeah.
know. And so there are a couple of cops I saw at one entrance, and I talked to one of the female cops, and she was like, "Yeah, I mean, this isn't hard. Like, this is like." This seems totally rational, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm out here, you know? More like, I'm glad I'm out here. I don't see this as like a horrible Saturday,
Yeah.
you know? And so it felt really comfortable. It didn't feel adversarial at all to me.
Good.
And I think I expected that a little bit, but you didn't just accidentally show up at that march not knowing what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of planning that went into going there, and a lot of communication on Facebook pages and things like that. I mean, it seemed to me. So, what about media coverage of it? What do you think about, based on what you saw at the event and what you saw in the media, either during the event or after?
The after part, I guess, I had some friends who went to the Atlanta March, so I knew that was happening in other places. And I had some friends from home who went marched in Nashville, some older ladies, like my mom's friends, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
But I didn't, when we got home, like I had heard some of those marches were huge, like through Facebook or whatever. Getting on the phone was hard because everybody was using the phone.
Yeah.
And calling people, that's part of the reason why we didn't get up with my sister. But watching the coverage afterwards, I was just like shocked. And when I talked to my husband, he was like, "You have to see how big this thing was," because I thought it was just, I thought, 20 people. So, you know, I didn't expect it to be as big as it was. And I certainly didn't expect it to branch out.
Yeah. Into like different cities, you mean?
Yeah, and how big it got in different cities. And then the international aspect, I was like, that took my heart. That people in London cared about some of this stuff that we were going through.
Antarctica. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
all over.
like that. I mean, it really made me happy.
Yeah.
We aren't the only people who care about this, and we see the injustice, and there are a lot of injustices happen outside of America that are much, much harmful to your daily life that I don't have to think about.
Oh yeah. And since for a living you basically do criminal justice, which ties into social justice, and so this is something that you've chosen to give your life to, and to see that kind of shown in one day, like who all supports this, and that must have been pretty exciting. Do you feel like you talked about the positive atmosphere when you were there, do you feel like that got reported in the media?
I'm not really sure. It's all about crowd sizes. It seemed like because of, I guess, the inauguration crowd size at that same time was in dispute. You know, it felt like they focused a lot on crowd sizes. And also, I think on like alt media, like, you know, Bitch magazine and stuff, it was all about there were no incidences. You know, like peaceful protest can happen, you know. Nobody's arm got blown off. Like, Stephanie is just like, I saw your face after that, and you were like, no.
She did mention that. She did say that she had to like calm it down and or like sort of steer the conversation away from that because she was like, Sarah was not having that. You're on a bus barreling towards this thing, this certain arm,
Potential
certain
bomb
dismemberment. Yeah. Let's see. So were there any moments? Because you know when you look back, you guys were there for several hours. Like, are there any moments that sort of stand out that you sort of, when you think back on the march, there are certain images in your mind or conversations or anything?
I think the bond between me and Stephanie, we really didn't even have to ask each other, like, if we were doing that together.
Yeah.
And what we were doing it for, we knew.
Yeah.
She has a son she's trying to raise to be a decent human being, and he's 13. He's awesome. And you can see some of I've known him since he was little,
Yeah.
our influence in him and how exciting that is.
Yeah.
Like, that 13-year-old boy can get, like, consent and stuff, like, we're really, I felt like, me and my husband had talked about this a lot, like, the standards that society hold for men are just like crap. Like, seriously, like, do better, dude. That's your bare minimum. And also it's a disservice to men to presume that they can't act better.
Well, when you said that you noticed a man with his children at the march, and you thought that was fantastic, and you did want to commend him because that's the bare minimum. Like, why should he not show up?
So me and my husband will get stuck in that kind of thing, and his life's different.
Yeah.
He's a musician, he's a carpenter, so he hangs out with a whole different crew. He doesn't hang out with my crew, And so he hears stuff from men and he has to address it.
Does he?
Does
he do that?
He has to.
Yeah.
For himself and me and all of society. He feels a strong obligation. Same with race, because he is from Mississippi. And a lot of people presume things about him since he's from Mississippi. And so just that, some of those conversations afterwards, like, who are we doing this for? I think about all the girls who come in my office and tell me about their own sexual assault, and how for my niece, I want a world where she's respected. Just like I think for me personally, since I don't have kids, and it wasn't really a choice. I'm very attached to my nieces and nephews and all the children I'm around. I feel like I have to be something good in their lives and something that they can trust me outside of their parents. They know I'll come pick them up, or listen to them when they think they want a drink or whatever, and give them. So I think thinking about that generational thing was something I really had not thought of.
Yeah.
And being able to say, my mom and her best friend left me with my daddy, and we lived, in Stephanie's house, anyway. Left and did this for all of us.
Yeah.
And our friend Carrie, she had 2 little ones. They're about a year and a half apart. They might have been like 2 and 3. She couldn't go because her husband wasn't my husband. Her husband, he's very traditional, and like, he had never really watched the kids, and they were so close in age and stuff. And she told us later, we assumed she couldn't go.
Yeah.
Which was the right assumption, and later she told us, thank you for not asking.
Oh, really?
Because y'all know I couldn't go, and it hurt to know why.
Yeah, so she was glad that she didn't have to have the conversation with you about
why she couldn't go.
Was she interested to hear how it went?
Yeah, and we told her we knew we were going for her too.
Yeah. All the people that can't go for whatever reason.
Right, and for her situation is part of the problem on why she couldn't go. Mm-hmm. As a woman who has no kids, I can just do it, And so...
Yeah, or Stephanie's husband clearly understood. It was like, I'll watch the kid while you go off and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And I was surprised by that response. Like, she told us that later afterwards, and I was like, and she was like, I knew it wasn't like you weren't asking me. Of course you wanted me to go.
Yeah.
She had enough awareness to know that, but she was like, you know the reasons I would have to give you and how that would make me think about my husband. And I mean, they're on their way to divorce. So this isn't something that was,
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that because I didn't even know we were doing it.
Yeah, exactly. But just by knowing that and respecting her,
Situation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You were marching for her as well, even though maybe not you didn't put her on your side, but for people in that situation. Tell me about. Okay, so you went to the march and you walked around and found the McDonald's and all that. Tell me about coming home. Like, you did all this, and then the bus trip home. How was that?
We slept a lot. A lot of us recovered. Like, oh, we did this. Did you see that?
Yeah, was that, did you guys
Stuff like
compare
that.
stories when you got back on the
Yeah,
bus?
and it was a wide variety of age on our bus. It seemed like, and race. Our bus had. It seemed like when I got to the march, I saw a lot of white ladies. As a white lady, I know we have been criticized for taking over movement, and I try to be very, very like, I know how those white ladies are, you know what I mean? And I'm one of them, and I'm trying to not do that. But our bus was very much I felt like it was majority black, some Hispanic, and older women, and then seemed like more 20-ish also. Like me, it's definitely more sort of like middle-aged.
Yeah, and not as many middle-aged ladies?
It didn't seem like that. The girl beside me, if I recall, she was like in her early 20s, and it was the same with like my nieces and sister. My sister's 10 years older than me, and my nieces, are in college, so it was interesting. I don't know if it was like at a life course space or what, because Carrie had her babies late, and then women are having their babies later, so I don't know. It did seem like our bus was pretty racially diverse, majority African American, and then it seemed like there was like a whole crew of like, I would say black ladies in their 50s, 60s in the front, like maybe with the church or something. I don't know.
But they were clearly all together?
Yeah, they were clearly all together. Then you just had a smattering of people. And we had a good time. We made us me and Stevie, of course, music is important to me. We made us a playlist, and it was hard to make because were you girl power songs or like mean girl songs, like Salt and Pepper, Shoop. Like, we love that song. Is it a girl power song? And I got into that debate because I overthink stuff. But it ended up with like a lot of Dolly and, like, do you put Jolene in there?
Yeah, did you play that on the bus, like for everybody? Did you put it on for everybody or just the two of you
We
guys?
did for some songs,
That's cool.
Like, I Will Survive. Some of the like mantra songs.
Yeah. But you're right. The songs mean different things for different people.
Right. That surprised me as a person who, like, when I was growing up in the 90s, it was all like Riot Girls and Courtney Love, like angry, right? And so I was like, Stephanie, this playlist is way harder than you think.
Yeah.
And it really made me think about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you put Jolene by Dolly Parton in? She's the town whore.
Well, it's a a woman who's being cheated on is talking to, the woman who is messing around with her husband. And it's like, yeah, which woman are you rooting for in this? I don't know.
See, and it was stuff like that I like had not thought of. And I like themes for some reason. Like we are going to have a girl power theme. Like when I came in here, I know what to wear because you might want to see this for your project. You might want to know that I wore a girl dot Barton boots. And of course, the song that went along with this is "These boots are made for walking." See, I put together all this, right?
That sounds like an amazing playlist. Did you send that into the archives as well? Oh, you totally should. Yeah, can we, if you're willing to share that, we would.
Well, there's some weird songs on there, okay? Like,
we would still love it.
do you have a pen?
Yes.
Have you heard
yes.
that song?
Yes.
That was
But
a great debate.
Well, you know what? That's and by the way, you're welcome to use whatever language you want. So you don't have to say unless you don't want someone to. Yeah, but there's people have dropped F-bombs. People have
Okay, I was
said all
wondering
sorts
if
of salty things.
Stephanie was here. I'm like,
Yeah, she didn't hold back. But that's part of the conversation. You know, if that's something that resonated with you, it's part of the whole conversation. That's interesting. It's
but
interesting.
music became part of it. There was a lot of stuff. What are we gonna wear? You know, like what shirt would express or I wore well-behaved women rarely make history.
Nice.
My mom had given me that, and that was important to me. And the boots. That was the most important things to me, and having food, of course.
Yeah. What did Stephanie wear? Do you remember?
She wore some shirt we had made up. Sometimes our students, our students sometimes will do really nice stuff for us. They made her an anti-racist shirt. It was one of the shirts the students made, I feel like. That portrayed some other, not necessarily pro-women shirt, but I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's probably in the pictures.
And it's making a statement.
A statement shirt.
Yeah.
And so it seems like since then, we have bought, like for Christmas and stuff, we bought more statement shirts. Like Nasty Women, they got, Carrie and her got that for Christmas. For Christmas this year, they got feminist shirts. Just gave feminist socks for, it's just like more and more. But that's the capitalist system, so I have to criticize. This is too much.
Yeah, well, somebody's making money on this, but there's that.
But I've always wanted one, so. But it seems like I have gotten more activist even in my clothes.
Yeah. Well, it's an easy way to make the statement. You show up, people know that you went to the march and therefore where you stand on certain issues. What about, so coming back on the march, you guys are all kind of trading stories and stuff. What about once you got back? What was it like to be back after the march? Did you talk about it to like your husband, and were people interested to hear?
We made Facebook posts about it. It seemed like a lot of our students were like, like, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Like it was a culmination of the stuff we had taught them. And that's something that students from a long time ago, like, that tells me I impacted them somehow.
Yeah.
If they remember those parts of me. And so we made Facebook posts about it, how we wouldn't want to do it with anybody else, and some of the funny parts. We talked, of course I talked to John, my husband, about it, and he's like, he's always been really supportive of anything I want to do in that way.
Yeah.
And mainly it seemed like students back in class would be like, tell us about, like
Yeah.
they were interested too.
Is it male and female students or just female students?
Mainly female students, but I always bring in the point of this is for men too. Here's one of the things I say, it sounds brash, but chances are either you got a vagina or you know somebody who's got one, or perhaps you want to marry someone who has one, or you'll create a person who has one. So it's of your interest too. And the conservative student body, male body we have, they're like, never thought of that. So that's how I advertise for vagina monologues, take back the nine. And I do have like reports back, because they have to send me something back about it, how it has changed some guy's life. So part of my advocacy also is to point out like the hypocrisy of you not caring about it.
Yeah. The fact that it's not my issue, that's not an excuse.
Right. But it seemed like that was some of the discussions in my class after that. And that would have been beginning of January, so we would be still through like the overview of whatever class. And I believe I taught a race class that semester and criminology, so I can incorporate that sort of thing into class.
Yeah.
Social movements is part of changing law and those type of things.
So it's interesting that you have sort of an academic, cerebral understanding of it, and then being part of it. I wonder how that changed your perception of what's going on, that you actually have this 30,000-foot view of it too. You know how these movements can impact society. Did you think about that? And I know Stephanie, being in sort of a similar field, did you guys have conversations about that, about the historical impact of this? At the time, I guess?
Yeah, and it was part of the reason why we went, because we think about Civil Rights March. We both teach about that and how that changed stuff. And we both teach about the feminist movement, second wave, I talk about how that changed rape laws, And it felt like, to me, my sister's generation and my generation sort of like dropped the ball. It felt like, to me.
How do you mean that?
Like, not continuing with some of those strides when now I may be too hard on my people, but just sort of like assuming, well, rape laws, that's handled. We're in college, let us go be sexually promiscuous and not judge, and it seemed like we got the fun parts, I guess, of that movement, but also we got the bad parts with rape and sexual assault, because that was when it was starting to be recognized as an actual problem on college campuses. So I felt like as far as activism goes, like my older sisters, they're born late 60s, and then I was born in 78. I feel like that sort of period of time was strange for women, young women specifically, as far as sexual morals go. And like what feminism meant, and so I felt like we kind of dropped the ball, like as far as academic research and being active in making some of this stuff an issue. Like I think about when I watched sexual harassment of Anita Hill hearings, like why did that not change my life when I was of age to start raising hell about sexual harassment, knowing that I experienced, So I felt like the motivation more so was there at the march, and seeing younger women and seeing my students actually take interest in this, and it's I know partially because of my passion about it. Even though I didn't do stuff about it. I do feel like I did some stuff. I hope some. But not as much as, Jermaine Greer and like some of the big ones.
But most people don't do the big, things. Let me ask you this, so what were your expectations after the march, or what did you hope that the march would accomplish?
Thinking about it, like the Me Too movement fit perfectly into that. I did not anticipate that.
Yeah.
But the Me Too movement fit perfectly into an outcome, possible outcome of that.
Yeah.
Some of the things I wanted us to focus on is how we treat other people who aren't like us.
Yeah.
And or like us in the sense of white, middle class, blah, blah,
Yeah.
middle, upper class, who's making the laws and and I feel like the biggest thing that's come out of this is women having the encouragement and feeling the empowerment to run for local state offices. And then it's blossomed up just within 2 years, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing to the federal level, because it takes a while to go from no elections, not being elected to anything, all the way to the top of the barrel, the top of the chain, you know? And I think about, wow, it feels like that is the outcome of the Trump election.
Yeah.
And a large part of it, I think, also was more motivated by the Women's March.
So you think that kind of got the ball rolling and got people
moving? We're going to
momentum?
finally put some people in office that represent our interests.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there was have you been to any marches or sort of organized events since then about like these same issues?
No.
Okay.
No, I've written more as far as sort of qualitative things, spiritual, what this did for me as a woman, top things, but I haven't moved beyond that issue.
Yeah. Well, what kind of things do you think it did? What kind of things have you been writing about?
Well, just like I said, my dissertation, the autonomy, that is really what I focused on, and that's part of liberal feminism, and that's the type of feminism that most people are going to accept, and sort of what autonomy means now, compared to prior to this last election.
Yeah.
And strides we've made in autonomy, like the Dear Colleague letters and stuff for Title IX sexual assault that have been written to colleges. Joe Biden did a lot of those about Title IX and sexual assault hearings, how those should be handled. And those have been rolled back. And I do sexual assault hearings here, and I felt really great about them. I felt like they were fair. That's why you have 3 people on the panel.
Yeah.
It went much better than what I experienced.
Yeah.
And then some of the other women on campus were, victims type advocates for, their soccer player or whatever.
Yeah.
And came up to me afterwards and I felt better if you were on the hearing. And it seemed like since just in the past couple of months, that's sort of been rolled back, more of a lackadaisical attitude and more lean in, just the idea that don't get sued.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the principle.
And I can't support that.
Yeah.
And I haven't been asked to do one since Sexual Assault Judicial Board since summer And I know there's been some.
How do you feel about that?
That scares me. I've been in judicial boards where I've had to explain consent. I've had to explain coercion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I went to some training on Title IX stuff for our state. And it was, to me, what I perceived as, don't get us sued. And if you've been sexually assaulted, maybe you shouldn't be on the hearing. You know, that could come back and be used against the school and lawsuit for being biased. And I made an argument that, well, the thing is, I know I'm biased. And also I know the research. And I don't look at things that aren't the thing, right? Like, I can point out 3 things that were not consent in this specific case. Also, we have 3 other people on the panel. Like, that was my argument. And wouldn't it be better to have somebody who knows about these type of things on a panel versus some dude who doesn't understand or some person who doesn't understand what consent is?
Yeah.
And so it just feels like that's sort of been rolled back. And some of that may be because of Betsy DeVos, and she's been focusing on the accuser. So just, I think about those girls that come in my office, and I could be one of the only people they've ever told. And I disclose in my class because that's how I got into this.
Yeah.
And I tell them, don't feel sorry for me, like I'm alive.
Yeah.
You can live after this, because a lot of college women think, well, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, and so a large part of my women's issues work is that, because it's so common.
Yeah. Yeah, and how frustrating is that in the 2 years since people went out in March and stuff, that things are rolling backwards? Is that, or do you think things are rolling backwards? Maybe
I think in specific areas, yeah. Or the feeling is. And I think there's becoming like criticism of Me Too, like guys can't even talk to women now. Like, some of that criticism, like, oh, get over yourself. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Specific things, but then also after watching some of the congressional stuff,
Like the Brett Kavanaugh hearings or other?
I was going through that Title IX training during Brett Kavanaugh, and that training was 9 to 5 for 2 days, a whole day. And that Brett Kavanaugh was going, my eyes started twitching. I had to call and get me some medicine, like anti-anxiety. I was so pissed. And I remember we talk about rape culture, or were, during that point in my senior seminar class, and even like my military guy who's a hardcore, like in the guns and stuff, and just not with this, And I was like, y'all understand about why women are pissed, right? And he was like, oh, hell yeah, I'd be pissed,
Oh, good.
So, it's little steps like that that give me encouragement. And so I don't know where the tides have turned. It seems like with the sexual assault stuff, it's sort of more underground, not necessarily malicious, but harmful. If your whole point is don't get our ass sued.
Yeah. Are we really standing behind you or just trying to protect ourselves? Is that
right?
How you feel?
That's the way I feel about that.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in sexual assault type judicial board hearings, whether researching them or knowing about them personally, for 20 years, 22 years. And see, some people in student affairs know that story and
Yeah.
fault me for that story. Some of them are like, but she's a great resource. I've seen her in the hearings, and it's not like she's like, he's guilty, you know what I mean? So the idea of angry feminist, I feel like I'm trying to, it feels like not so much, at that march did not feel like the angry feminist vibe, but then also like there's a lot of stuff to be pissed off about.
Mm-hmm.
And so what? If you aren't pissed off about it, something is wrong with you.
Yeah. Probably not paying close enough attention, I would think. Well, have you, so with these disappointments since the march, because there have been some, and you've talked about that, like, what kind of strategies have you used to cope, or like talk to others about, because maybe you have students that come in and talk to you and say, you know, I thought things had changed, clearly they haven't. Like, do you have any strategies or suggestions for people in that situation?
Well, one thing, I do a lot of some self-reflective work also through classes.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm already doing the research, and they're already doing the readings,
Uh-huh.
supposedly.
Hopefully.
And at senior seminar, we cover like hot topics, you know, and Me Too is one of them. And criminal justice has historically been a male-dominated major, but we got majority women. But a lot of our women are wanting to go into victim services. And so the sort of attitude has changed within my classes about, you know, rape culture and all those things. Whereas once before I had to really explain it and be like, this is real. This happened to me. Ladies, if you feel comfortable, tell them what happens to you at the dance club at
Yeah.
11:30. Who all gropes you, you know?
Yeah.
So it seems like I'm having to do more and more like trauma type awareness for both the people going to work in that field, and then also how that works with the people that they are going to be counseling or whatever. And then female police officers having to deal with sexual assault. And male police officers too, because a lot of male police officers, that's the worst, you know. And men don't know how to handle that a lot of times without going and beating the shit out of somebody. And that's part of that culture, you know. But I feel like I've had to handle more like explanations of why this is really important on how you react.
Yeah.
Like, please don't react. Don't ask these questions. I feel like I have to reiterate that more. Like, what were you doing? You know, try to make sure that you're coming at this in a way that you're very careful with your words.
Yeah.
And portraying believability, even if you think women lie about this.
Yeah.
The data doesn't support that, but even if you think that, when you deal with that client or that victim, portraying the idea that there's probably good chances she's telling the truth.
Yeah.
And how that can instill confidence and all this stuff. And then also I've had to deal with the like students going into these fields, how they deal with the trauma of that.
Yeah.
As far as high rates of alcoholism, high rates of, you know, suicide, divorce, all those things. How are you going to handle that?
Yeah.
I had a student, actually, she works for GBI. She just got moved to the child pornography section in January. And she's like, I know I can't stay in this very long.
Yeah.
You know, and she's like, it changes my attitude towards men. And she's like, how do I, you know? And she's been out in the field for like 2 years with GBI, and this is now her movement to the area. And they just did a big bust in Atlanta around, she was involved with that one. And so, like dealing with some of the psychological trauma issues, and I think the men in the class it helps them know how traumatizing this can be for other people.
Yeah.
And try to put themselves in another position.
Which is not, unfortunately, in the 2 years since we've tried to bring some light to this, it clearly is not sticking with some people.
Right.
I want to see if there's any, is there anything else that you want to sort of talk about about the march, or how it shaped your views, or where, how you think it's helped or not helped or impacted your life? Or
I definitely felt much more motivated to to share my experiences with sexism in my life.
Yeah.
I think in academia, specifically, like personal shit's supposed to be left alone.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make sense to me, because if you didn't have personal shit, how would you get interested in the academic stuff? I had this experience that impacted me, and I was interpreting it, and I looked to academia to help me explain that. So, and I think that sort of male-dominated, quantitative focus, and it's very irritating to me.
Yeah.
And, well, also I do a lot of social issues. So consequences of sexual assault 20 years later can be a variety of different things than when it was at 3 months, you know, and talking about for example, I do some work in recovery in prison on Thursday nights, all men's group.
Wow.
And thinking I would have never done that unless I had gotten sober.
Yeah.
A large part of why I drank to alcoholism was because of some of these life things that I had not dealt with.
Yeah.
And so writing about alcoholism in relation to my own sexual assault, and then going into prison and working with potential sex offenders, I don't know what they've done.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know what they've done, because my whole attitude would change.
Yeah.
I feel like that's worthy of academia. But I feel like with certain areas, like, I guess certain conferences and stuff, or certain people within academia, I feel like, that's too personal, right. You know what I mean? But I'm like, well, how did you get interested in your topic? Did something happen to you?
Yeah.
Or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you research bail, like the bail system, right?
There has to be a story there, yeah.
So I feel like I really want to change that.
Yeah.
And I know the feminist movement did a huge, that was one of their areas, the storytelling aspects. And just like getting the cojones to do that and be criticized for it scares me to death.
Good to be put out in the public eye, or however big the public is, and exposed to people picking everything apart. That's very scary.
And it's so really, really personal that I feel very passionate about. Like one of the things I say in classes when I describe my rape is, you can't argue with me about my rape.
That's a good point. It's your story and nobody else was there. Nobody in the classroom was there except you.
Right, and I also tell them, don't feel sorry for, like, no, you live after that. And anyway, I think I already said that, but just, I feel like I have more of a duty to tell those stories, and now it's getting the confidence to do it for myself.
Does it help to have been to the march and seen that there are
That's
all
what
these women that,
Yeah, that
not just for
needs
you, it's for
something
them.
said like that. You know, and the students who are just sweet as sugar, and you can look in their eyes and see sadness, and they're mad. And this other person who really may not have thought that they did anything wrong.
yeah,
That's the part that blows my mind sitting through those judicial boards. This dude really did not know this was wrong. Like,
Yeah.
he honestly believes he did not do anything.
yeah,
And how did you miss that? Right? And so I feel like a large part of that's like my duty, you know, like
Yeah.
in my life.
yeah,
And like she said, like, I'm all like, I'm 40, bitch. I do what I want, right? That's where I feel like some of the confidence is coming from.
yeah,
I was very suicidal after my rape, and I actively tried not to be 40. And I almost succeeded 2 times, you know? And so I'm amazed that I made it here, right? I mean, there's a lot of troubling times, alcoholism. But also that's part of that territory. And I can't tell you where I'm at now without that other bad stuff. I
Yeah.
can't leave out the bad stuff.
right, it's informed who you are and how you see the world. I definitely agree with that. And what you tell other people. Well, I think that concludes our talk about the Women's March. It's been fascinating. It's been really nice to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours.